Hey Dr. S, my name is Samantha Nissen. I went with your advice and chose the evaluation of cognition in individuals with PTSD as my project topic. If you hear any background noise, sorry, I have three dogs and sometimes they get kind of loud. What is cognition? Cognition is the range of mental processes relating to the acquisition, storage, manipulation, and retrieval of information. This is important because researchers use this understanding of other people and their thought processes to help understand why people make the choices and actions that they do. What is PTSD? Post-traumatic stress disorder is currently rising in today's society. PTSD has been diagnosed as an anxiety disorder that occurs for individuals that have the following experience or witnessing of a traumatic event. These events usually are life-threatening and can include, but not be limited to, military combat, natural disasters, terrorist incidents, serious accidents, physical or sexual abuse. These can also be expanded to instances of severe levels of stress, witnessing all of these accidents happen, or anything else that could put the individual into a high level. PTSD varies for each individual. Some are able to get better with time on their own, and others continue to get worse with time. There is methods of treatment, including working with a therapist and being prescribed medication in order to work through the PTSD. There have been identified biological, psychological, and social factors that affect development of PTSD. Working through with a therapist or getting prescribed medication can help an individual through their PTSD, or often revisiting the scene of the traumatic event can help bring in closure, or if it's an abuse situation, the individual can get closure through the situation by speaking with the person that caused the abuse and getting an answer as to why they did it, or just being able to see them incarcerated for their actions can sometimes help with the closure process. Why is the evaluating cognition in individuals who suffer from PTSD relevant in today's society? There has been a huge increase in abuse, traumatic events, a severe number of veterans coming home from war, a rising mass shooting number, and natural disasters including tornadoes, hurricanes, fires, and floods. With so many more reports of traumatic events in today's society, there is no way to know that these events didn't happen in the past, where individuals didn't have an outlet like the news or police to be able to go and report their incidents. These individuals most likely did suffer the same situations in previous history years, but just didn't have the outlet of recording their events. So we see that the PTSD levels have risen, but that could just be because of the news outlet ability to transfer news so much faster than before. Tests that are used to evaluate cognition in individuals with PTSD. There has not been a specific purpose test for PTSD measuring cognition, but there have been multiple tests that have functioned well duplicately for both processes. These tests include the Folstein Mini Mental Status Exam, the Stroop Color Word Inhibition, and the Structured Clinical Interview for DSM. The Folstein Mini Mental Status Exam is a 30-point questionnaire used to measure cognitive impairment. The Stroop Color Word Inhibition is a colored word test that individuals recite the color of the word that is written. And Structured Clinical Interview for DSM is also a questionnaire that has been used to identify cognition in individuals with PTSD. The Folstein Mini Mental Status Exam can be seen at the upper left-hand corner. The questions that are asked are listed along with the point system. Each question that the individual is asked resides in either a point or not getting a point. And then the total score at the end of the questionnaire adds up, and that will reflect on whether the individual suffers any cognitive ability from their PTSD, or if they don't have PTSD, if their cognitive ability is at a normal level. On the upper right-hand corner, we have the Stroop color word inhibition test. The individual will read off the color of the word that is written. Some might be the same as the color that is written, and some will be different. And then at the bottom of the slide, we're able to see the structured clinical interview for DSM. And you see that the questionnaire is centered towards a couple of general questions about the individual, and then gets into more specific questions of their trauma. And then a series of self-reported scales will help identify their reflection of PTSD also. Overall, the evaluations of the tests that are currently used for identifying cognition in individuals with PTSD is not as high as it should be, specifically because there is not a test that has been designed to identify cognition in an individual that has been diagnosed with PTSD. If there was a test that was more specific for it, we would be able to know if the results were specific to PTSD rather than based on another mental disorder that we're able to closely associate with PTSD. The settings for all of the tests are in a controlled environment, have a variety of participants between males and females, different cultural and ethical backgrounds, and are also construed of participants who suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder and those who do not suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. The purpose of these tests is to see if individuals with PTSD experience the same cognitive reactions as those who do not have PTSD, or to see if they do have the same level of PTSD cognition even though they suffer from it. Factors that are included when identifying the test include that all participants come from different backgrounds. They also have differences in genders. There are cultural differences, and each individual experience different types of trauma. This results in there are people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, meaning that somebody who is poor or even homeless could have a different traumatic experience than somebody who is considered high class. Differences in genders can relate. Females are more likely to experience a traumatic event that is sexual or physical abuse. Cultural differences include that different cultures do not identify mental health disorders and therefore would not recognize that PTSD is a disorder that would need medical attention. And also there are different types of traumatic levels, resulting in that one individual could witness an event and not be in direct line of danger compared to somebody who was either seeing death happen firsthand, was almost killed, or had to kill somebody directly in order to save their self or someone near them. These different factors all play into the different levels of PTSD that an individual can have, and therefore can reflect their cognitive ability differently based on their level of PTSD. What are some of the differences in cultures that arise for PTSD individuals? Is that different cultures have different levels of stress and trauma. For example, somebody that would be a refugee of war would have a different experience than somebody who was directly a war victim or an abuse victim. A refugee is going to be more likely to have a PTSD episode when a bomb goes off, rather than an abuse victim would have PTSD if they hear a certain sound, or a rape victim hears a man walk up behind her that has a similar voice to her attacker. These could all trigger different PTSD reactions. Again, multicultural health association, meaning that different cultures don't accept mental health disorders such as PTSD, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder as an accepted medical condition, and therefore would not have any outlets for the individual to get help or even know that PTSD is a diagnosis, and they could live their whole life with it and not realize it. We have found that concerns of PTSD is the widespread of PTSD being noticed is a Western-bound disorder, puts the validity of the disorder at risk, but luckily with enough research and care for the subject, there has been evidence found that PTSD is a cross-cultural validity, and was able to confirm PTSD and its validity. We look at the major issue with these tests to see, is it ethical to put a participant back through an experience that could relive their PTSD? There were some researchers who found that putting a participant back into the situation that could trigger a post-traumatic stress disorder attack did not think that it was ethical, and after many attempts of research, they found that it was okay to put the participant back through the questioning and triggering tests that could make the PTSD flare, as long as the participant was not put directly into a situation that they had previously been in that triggered their PTSD. So the tests were found to be ethical and non-biased, which is significant for the research to show that there wasn't any errors behind it also. We have found that there are recorded research for predicting of PTSD. Being able to predict PTSD can be beneficial for researchers because they are able to identify signs that show that there is going to be an individual with PTSD. For example, if somebody goes to war and they are in an intense situation, they can bring that individual back to a treatment center and help them by beginning the coping mechanisms immediately, comparing to individuals who had to go into a stress or anxiety attack in order to be able to receive treatment for their PTSD. There's also predictors if an individual lives in an area or comes from a family that suffers abuse or had traumatic experiences at a young age. They can show signs of PTSD episodes later in life, and they can help manage them and teach them ways to help prevent these instances. So overall, we have found that PTSD is able to be identified in an individual, and that also the cognitive levels of individuals with PTSD overall has not been altered. There are instances where the cognitive ability is a little bit delayed or slowed from their reactions, but overall, individuals who suffer from PTSD from the tests that are currently designed have not shown any indication of not having full cognitive ability. There are instances where individuals could freeze with their reactions or be slower or delayed. Extreme cases resulted in individuals not being able to complete the test, but that was not very high in the situations. So overall, the evaluation is that individuals have same level of cognitive abilities with PTSD as they do without PTSD. So overall, we were able to conclude that, but could definitely have better outcomes if we were to have a test developed that was specifically for PTSD and identifying if the individual had cognitive ability with or without the PTSD. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me or call me. Otherwise, thank you so much for letting me be in your class, and I look forward to finishing out the class with you. Thank you.